So we've had multiple demonstrations on this small hollow ornament, but I'll try to do the hollowing quick and then maybe focus a little bit more on the finials. I'm not sure we did any finials in here. So I like to keep the small pieces that have really nice grain. And sometimes they'll have inclusions and things. Trying to think here, what am I looking at? Okay, so right here, is this okay? All right. So they're usually too small to mount by themselves, so I'll glue them on a block. And like on this particular one, I was wondering if it was big enough to make a little globe, and I'll take the compass and I'll just do a couple circles on it, give me that image on if the inclusions are gonna make it as a design feature, or is it gonna wreck it? You know what I mean? If it's too big or too far in. And so that can just be a little step that you take as you're determining if your scrap wood can be used for this particular project. And then the finials, I got a buddy who builds houses, and I get all kinds of 3/4 inch, like scrap maple, and that works really good for finials. Make sure you're using straight grain, and the hard maple is obviously a little better than the soft maple, but the stuff makes really nice finials. And so the projects that I've done, I think I brought these in the past. So these are hollow, and they're not paper thin, but I can show you one that was paper thin. This one right here, I got it really nice and thin, and well, I get plenty of these, by the way, so that's just part of it. And then, the finials, everybody's got their own style. I do like trying to get them small, like the smallest piece on there, if it's around that 2 millimeters, that tends to be a very pleasant size that's still stable. So you don't have to worry too much. If it's like maple, walnut, and there's a couple other hardwoods. If they don't have a lot of open grain, they'll make nice finials. And then I can just pass this stuff around. I'll just pass the box around so you can kind of poke through it. But I've also experimented with the items that have bark on them yet. So you turn them, you hollow them, and you add your ends to them after the fact. And these are real nice when they're hanging on a tree. So, and like here's one that I'll probably still finish, but the inclusion is real close to, I think it'll blow out after I hollow it. So if you look on the end like that, it kind of goes in a little deeper than I would have preferred. But even burl pieces, if you get a couple of inclusions, a couple of holes, it adds, kind of a feature look to your little balls. So that'll be the demo today. And actually, why don't you can just look at these later, or if you want to pass them around, that's fine. So, yeah, like I glue them up, and I can use these scraps. I end up with all kinds of beautiful wood that's too small to turn, other than the small little ornament things. So I kind of go in streaks, throw them in a box, and then periodically I'll glue up a bunch of blanks. No, I like the wood glue, so I just use Titebond. Yeah, 1 or 2, actually 3's okay too, but you don't need a 3. And I clamp them. I could have went in that box, but all right. So I did do a dry run. This is a belt-driven multi-pulley system. It's not variable speed, but it seems to be working pretty good. I'm going to be turning on the third pulley. It says 1250. When I turn on my larger lathes, I'm usually maxed out with the small items on the low gear. So I'm usually around 1,000, maybe 1,100 RPM is usually where I turn anyways. I know if you're turning pens and they're really narrow, you want to be higher, but this has been working out for me, mostly because I'm too lazy to change the belt. But it works just fine. You just have to adjust your cutting speed accordingly. So, one of the things that I'll just kind of touch base on is make sure that your tailstock is always in the same position. Excuse me, I'm gonna probably have a dry throat here a little bit today. So you want consistency, and so I always push my tailstock away from me against the far rail. And if you hear it, there's just a little bit of play in these things. So that'll actually help you for consistency. So I'll push it like that, and I'll get it close, and then I'll lock it in. And that's a little something that you can do. Put your spur drive in early and check, make sure your alignment is okay. There's probably an outside chance that if it's out of alignment, you may have to pull it towards you and just see how that works out if it's got a smaller lathe. I had a Jet, was it a 1642? Is that what you got? Right? I got one just like that. And then I had to adjust one of the feet because the bed was, even though it was big, right, and it's a lot of metal, it racked just a little bit. And by turning one of your feet, you can actually get your tailstock to realign on there. And there was a guy that Ralph. What was Ralph that joined the Nina Club? Edwards? Was it Ralph? Wasn't it Edwards from Shawano? And he was having troubles with his too. And when I was down there, I said, well, let's give this a try. And a couple of cranks on one foot, and it went right back into alignment. So, little tip: use your spur drive and your live center, and try to get those to line up, and make sure that you get it in place. All right, so this is mounted to the faceplate with 4 screws. I'll still engage the tailstock while I'm roughing it out. And I guess I'm ready. Oh, no, is that okay, or is it? That's not too bad. See, it works. So what I'll do with these normally is I round them out, and I get the diameter that gives me, the best use of the wood with the inclusions or any defects that are in it. This particular one is pretty clean, and this bad edge on here will just disappear when it gets rounded, so I'm not worried about that. I know I brought my calipers, but I think what I'll do is I'll just use my tape measure. So I'll check the diameter. I got about 2 1/8, and then I'll draw that on this blank so I know where I'll have the 2 ends. And this piece is almost square, so I know that the end of my little globe will be right at the joint of the 2 pieces of wood. if you remember, Jerry taught us, did a demo on making globes. And so you can do the 45 degree to kind of help you manually get your globe in place. So, you know, put your center mark on there, and then halfway in between, and then halfway in between again. And those will be the cuts that you can start with to get your shape established. So on this side, I'm going to leave it thick and clean that up later for obvious reasons, because we need that strength to bore the hole and then do the hollowing. And then on this side, I'll get it as, you know, as shaped as closely as I can to the final shape. Take a cut on here, get it at 45 degrees. And if you want to do it manually, then we ended up with 2 new facets. Would it be better if is that camera okay right there, or should we move the camera? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to think, can you see it okay, or you want to watch it on the screen? I'm just looking for, and then that's kind of in the way of the viewing. This is better? Okay. So then what I'll do is, because we have a corner right here, and so these are the spaces, then I'm going to cut these in half again. Right there and then right there. And then those will be the next cuts that I make another bevel on. And then I'll cut this one off. And I'll do the same going this way. And like I said, I'll be leaving that pretty much alone. So now I'm getting close to the tailstock, so I'm just going to remove it. Which is a question? Well, that's what that's what I was wondering. And like maybe this one, I could even rotate the lathe one way or the other. Like this way? Do you if you can grab this is side underneath here, it's strong, and then just rotate it like that. Okay. How's that? Yeah, right? We will get better at this. And we're looking for consultants and camera operators and setup people all the time, Kevin. So again, I'm just establishing the sphere. When you take the tailstock off, though, it's not that uncommon that you might end up getting a little more vibration, or it might not be quite as centered. So just be aware of that. You might have to clean up some of your cuts again. And I did notice I had a flat spot here, so I'm going to have to take that off. Okay. A little bit as I make the curve. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing something subconsciously, I think, but yeah. So when I'm doing that, I'll start with the flute up a little bit higher, and then as I'm getting to the outside edge like this, I am rolling. I'm turning my wrist to get that to cut. And my objective would be to reduce any sanding that I have to perform. And I mentioned this a lot in the past, but when you're roughing this out, it is the absolute best time to practice your technique, because if you're enjoying your time at the lathe, every cut can be like your practice cut that you're trying to get that final finish on. Get rid of all your tool marks, get your bevel rubbing just right. And don't forget that the finer cut and the smaller the tool, the smaller the tear out. So that'll all contribute to a good finish. And I'm not going to do any sanding here today, but sanding can fix quite a bit as well. But we were just talking about, like Paul's question on the sapwood, and your tools tend to leave a better, a flatter, smoother surface, and reduce that change in texture that you get from softwood to early wood to late wood on your projects. So I got a skew here right now, and this will just be using it as a scraper, kind of clean up the outside. I just feel like I'm working in miniature because I'm normally on a little bigger lathe, and this lathe is it's got plenty of speed and power for this, and it's doing a nice job. I think this was yep, I got it from Joe got it from Larry, so it's been in the club. And I have a DC motor at home from a treadmill, and I just feel like I need to figure out a way to hook that up here and then have variable speed, because those treadmill lathes have pretty nice motors on them. And that, if you're familiar with that, the direct current on like a treadmill lathe allows for more torque on your lathe through the whole speed range, versus you have a different torque when you change the pulleys on an AC motor. So you can get more torque at the lower end. So basically, we got our globe. All right. I know I have it somewhere. No, I don't want to do that. Blow into the mic. Actually, I got this. Yeah. You know what? You're probably right. I'm not familiar with that, though. This is a Delta. Yeah. Oh, yeah, this one doesn't have a variable speed dial. You can get that and hook it up. Oh, okay. All right, so because I had the tailstock up, I do have a small dimple on the end, and that small dimple can help keep your drill bit aligned. If I didn't have that, I would take probably my 1/8" parting tool. Let's see, my 1/8" parting tool, and then I would come in here and I would just put a little indent in there to make sure that as that your drill bit enters, you're getting it straight. The other thing I'll do is get a little piece of tape, and I think I'll just reuse this one. What did I just do with my tape measure? Put it in my pocket, maybe. Yep. So I think it was about 2. I'm going to go 1 3/4 inch in, and that'll leave it shy of the end. Make sure I get the full run on here before it starts to pop the drill out. Yeah, Terry asked what size this was. This is 5/8, so I found that the 5/8 is a pretty good blend of keeping it as small as possible and still allowing me to get tools in there. I have a couple different tools that I will be using, and yeah, I wanted to make sure that you're comfortable that we don't need to spend a lot of money on the tools. This is just an Allen wrench that I jammed in here. I got 3 or 4 of these that I've used for quite a while. And then when Hunter came to our club, I bought a set of the carbide tipped ones. And these are more aggressive, so be careful. But they work real nice and they stay sharp a long time. So I do, yes. And I'm what I'd like to do if I'm doing a demo is I won't drill through because of the strength that's added, but at home quite a bit, I will run that all the way through and just take the chance. But I've blown away quite a few of them, and I figured on the demo I'll just play it safe. But yeah, I would run it through at the end in this case after I'm all done, and then run it through and then sever, and then make that last cut. Also, some of them only have, like the red and the green one there, they don't have 2 holes in them. So it all depends on the type of ornament you want to make. Oh, and I want to change the belt speed when I'm drilling. So I was at 1250 right here. When I'm drilling with a little bigger wood, I'll drop that speed down. I think this 800 is where I'm going to go. And that tends to be a little better for the Forstner bits. So on here, the adjustment and the lock on here was a little too loose, and this was rotating. So you can't have this locked in, obviously, and then plunge the spindle here, but it has to be engaged to a certain degree so that it runs down the groove and keeps the drill bit from twisting. I wasn't quite sure how this would work because, in all honesty, I never did drilling with a MIDI lathe before. And this holds up quite well. When you pull these out, make sure you hold on to these. Paul can vouch for the fact that it's a good idea. He witnessed me pulling this out in Utah, and I didn't, and the chuck went like this, broke the bit, and went bouncing across the floor. The other thing that, in this particular case, the wood is dry, so you're going to be a little safer. Wet wood, when it heats up, the moisture expands, makes the wood grain expand, and so then you'd have more of a possibility for it jamming and getting caught inside your project. So just remember, the dry wood is a little cleaner for that operation. I'll push the belt back up to 1250. It's amazing what you can do at different speeds when you get lazy. Right? Yep, same thing with the drill press. Like, that's close enough. I'll just take more time. All right, so right now I just have a parallel hole that goes all the way through, and I'll be using just a straight cutter, because you can do, with something this small, you can do about 80-90% of the hollowing with a straight cutter. You don't even need something that's crooked like this, unless you're trying to get it ultra thin and you want to get kind of behind that hole. So my goal isn't always to get them paper thin. It's kind of just to reduce the weight so they can hang on a tree reasonably well. When we were in turning Chicago, who's the guy? I've been getting bad with names. I think he might be the British turner, does a lot of textures and embellishments and stuff, but he made kind of a teardrop ornament, and that was his big thing with everybody. He said, hey, just make sure that you're having fun. Hollow it out reasonably well, remove some of the bulk. And his particular ornament, he would plug and then reshape the end. So that was one way to, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think it will. Thanks, Paul. Let's see here. Can you see that okay? Oops. So, anyway, it was a neat little demo. He played around with the paint on it, which was kind of cool. So, somebody that plays with a lot of color. What was his name again? He was in. I went to a 2-day class with him in Madison. And Chromacraft. You familiar with Chromacraft? Uses his name on all the Chromacraft dyes and stains and yes, Nick Agar. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, so he likes to do the embellishment thing, and he comes up with some pretty creative items. Yeah, so the ornament itself was teardrop, so the end of it, had a point, and he spray painted it with something fairly glossy, like a green, first it was green, like green or red, and it was pretty glossy, so it was nice and smooth. He had a nice finish on it, and then he had a certain type of gold though, so he used cheap red and green, but he said you got to use a little more expensive gold paint to get it to work right. And as it was spinning, he would hit just the tip and overload it. And because of centrifugal force, and what would you call it, and surface tension, it stayed on the ornament, but centrifugal force made it rise up. And so then when you look at it from the end, it looks like a sunburst or a starburst, right? And then when you hang it like this, it's real dark gold, heavy the bottom tip, and then all these little fingers of gold kind of wandered up, and it was pretty cool. So now I'll just go through the hollowing. Like I said, with these small ones, I can get quite a few of the quite a bit of the hollowing done. What I'll do is, in this particular one, I stopped short, so I'll know that I'm about that deep. Quite often, I'll put a piece of tape or something on there. Actually, I think I got a clip I can do. And then, start by the front edge, go in, probably start like a 1/4 of an inch in, because what you'll need when you glue this is you want the tenon to have some surface area on the edge of the globe. It's real easy if you start at 1/8 of an inch to all of a sudden have like a sharp edge. So if you leave it at a 1/4 of an inch and start hollowing deeper, then when you get to the end, you could clean that up a little bit and still have a good glue surface. But that's just another technique that you just want to make sure that you start getting it all hollowed out. That's one way. Actually, that was what Mahoney told us. And then I still couldn't figure it out because he would sit there and he would go, "Oh, no, you can take some more. No, a little more here. See that?" And I'm going like, "Yeah, it still sounds like a snare drum to me." But he was pretty good at that. And I think when you get to that 2 millimeter to 3 millimeter thickness, I think it does make a big difference. But I was like, yeah, no, I'm not there yet. I can't get it that thin. I've used just the wire thing like they taught in the school, right? So you take a little piece of wire, make a C out of it, and measure, let's say, a 1/4 of an inch. You keep the two pieces, and then you could tuck that in there, and if it's touching, you're still too thick. And if you got 1/8 of an inch of gap, you got an 1/8 inch wall, that kind of a thing. So that works pretty good. And like you said, if you're paying attention, you can hear it. But there's one here too that I heard it right to the end. And if you do a bunch of these, it's amazing how quickly you can get a feel for where the head of your tool is. So right now I stick in the tip of the cutter. I'm sticking the tip of the cutter way in, and I can dead end it, and that's the bottom, and hopefully short of poking through the wall, but that's the bottom of my hole. And then I know that if I then pull it toward me, the tip, then I just need to rotate my right hand out and start carving away the back side of that. So I'll reference the flat spot from the drill bit, then rotate that around. Okay, Larry. No, it's still too thick. Right till the end it will be. And the dry wood actually turns nicer when you're hollowing these small items. It comes out easier. and it doesn't tend to hurt the cutting action of your tool. And 5/8 is still a little bit small for my finger, but you know, this, I'm pretty close as far as getting it to the right weight for hanging on a tree. And need just a little more tool, so. No, this is actually a real small insert. So I don't know, what is that? 7 inches-ish? Yeah. Hunter used to have 2 sets of these. One was just for the insert on a long arm, and then the other one was a little bit longer. And he said he wasn't selling enough of one of them, and so he only makes the one size. But you know, for these small items, this works fine. And then I do have a bigger bar that I could put this on if I wanted, and then it's got set screws in it, so you know, it'd be 3/4 of an inch diameter, and you can reach deeper if you wanted to do some deeper hollowing with the small bit. I can feel a ridge in there, and it's, I don't know if you see that, but you could feel it kind of jumping over that. So that's the part that I would like to clean up. And that would be something that you can kind of practice when you're doing these, is see if you can visualize the texture that's inside of these balls, inside of the ornament, with the tip of your tool. So if you stick it in here and I'm pulling it across the hole, I kind of have a flat spot right there, but I need that because I'm going to be carving this off a little bit. There is a groove, and then on the side, you know, you can kind of feel that. And it's not too bad. Just for grins, I think I'll use one of the bent ones. Is this the right one? So the tools that I bought from Hunter came in a set. Yeah, which camera is it? This one, right? No. So it has a straight and it's got 2 curved ones, but one of the curved has a real hard angle on the tip, and that's if you were to do, let's say like an urn with a heavy shoulder, where you have a real hard shoulder. This one is got an angle on the bit that allows it to be less aggressive on the inside of it, like a shoulder, so you can get around that corner easier. It's nice to have when you do it, but I find myself not using it very much because I can do almost all of it with these other 2. So now I'm just going to finish the shoulder in here a little bit. Told you not to cut too much right away. And then this is another one of those little tips, right? Because of that angle, you're losing your leverage on your cutter. So if the tool rest is behind this elbow, then you're having a good support with your handle and the tip. But when the tool rest gets out in front, this wants to lever down, and it's counterintuitive because you have to move your tool rest further away to get better support in that particular case. But don't lose track of that because it's important. And I'll just do a quick measure if I want to get to the front edge here. So now I'm 1.5 inches, a little better than 1.5 inches away, but the cutter will be in line with the handle and it'll actually be more steady. So I'm just doing the light cuts on the shoulder in here and getting that cleaned up. And then, here, I'll put the microphone here, Larry. I don't know, it's still too thick, I think. I'm not going anymore. I'm done. All right. So I'll just stop right there. Again, feel free to make it as thin as you want when you make your own at home. So now I'm going to finish shaping the top. Yeah. They used to have the fire trucks right behind us. Are they still there? And another thing too is these are all handmade ornaments, right? So I wouldn't worry about trying to make them perfect. I would try to make them with a plan though. So if you want the top and the bottom to be the same, you know, try to get the curves the same on the top and the bottom, and you'll have, you know, kind of maybe an oblong, maybe teardrop is even okay if you do it intentional and try to keep it in context, but don't worry a whole lot. Don't sweat that. All right. So when I'm looking at this, the 5/8 inch hole and the diameter of my tenon over here is getting pretty close. So I'm just going to punch that through with the drill bit, and then finish my last outside cut. And again, this just helps you with a secure glue joint. You could do this right away if if you're comfortable watching the diameter and taking small cuts as you're hollowing. I can hear that now. It went into the oak. It sounds different. So I have a 5-inch hole now at the top and the bottom of this little globe. And I'll finish carving this off, and if I did it right, we'll have about an 1/8 inch or so wall on both the top and the bottom, and that'll be enough glue surface to hold the tenon for the finial and then the wire holder. So, oops, there we go. Well, that one actually gave loose on the oak. So I should have, that makes sense now that it happened, right? So the oak is the open grain. It was glued up on side grain here. And when it got too thin, the side grain gave out. That's a good tip. So Mark just said, leave the drill bit in here. And then when you part that off, it'll actually drop onto the drill bit. So I got, I would take this at home and I would just push it on the sander, like a belt sander, and I would just clean that up. But we can pass that around real quick. You can. Yep. And then let your drill do the cut. Ah, okay. So did you hear that? What Al will do is he'll actually shape that first, and then he'll push the drill bit through, and because the tenon is smaller than the drill bit, it does the separation for you and then holds it on. So, yeah. Right? All right. This was Joe's too, right here. Like this, this chuck had the 1-inch insert that you couldn't get off. Well, 2 people later, we got it off, and then after I got it off, I was like, oh, now I have to put it back on. Well, a friend of mine, you know, he works maintenance in a mill. He brought home the right size socket and a big impact wrench, and then and all of a sudden it pops, and it pops really quick. But I actually was trying all different ways to hold it and turn it off, and I actually bent this shroud just a little bit, and as soon as I did, I just stopped. But you can't turn it with a wrench, but that impact wrench is just, that little hammering effect was the ticket. That was the ticket. And actually, I'm going to just not use this quite yet. So to make the finial, we're going to use a piece of maple. And what did I do with, here it is, there we go. So we'll just turn this between, I'll turn a tenon on it between centers and get a nice tenon that the chuck can hold on to. And then we'll make the finial. Okay, I pre-punched little holes in my wood to align it. Yes, you can. So if you put the square in the chuck, it'll hold it. And I've actually had good luck with that. But you do have a little better grip if there's a shoulder that's resting on the face of the chuck as well as the tenon that's inside. And so when you're doing a finial, you're going to get a little less chance of vibration. And then the other thing that it does is I just cut these quick on the bandsaw, so I'm not convinced that it's exactly square. So it might be a little rectangular, which means I only have 2 jaws holding it. And by putting the tenon on there, I kind of, you know, reduce that chance. So I'm just using my 1/8-inch parting tool to create the tenon. I'm getting close to the spur drive, but I'm leaving about, let's call it 2 millimeters again. And then I can just chip that off when I insert it into the jaws. So I got my shoulder, and then if you look at this, you know, you can just kind of take those off because it's end grain. It'll chip off real easy. So what I actually started doing with the finials is using the skew. And I know that a lot of times people don't like to use it, but it's a nice exercise for that. And you'd be amazed at after you do it a couple of times, the finish that you can get, and how a skew excels in taking a very fine cut. So I'm going to get this in here just kind of loose. I'm going to hold it, and I'll bring up the tailstock, and I'm going to center my tail, or push my tailstock against the outside bed. And then I'll firm it up a little bit and tighten this. It's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey on this one. Right? Did you know that Nova changed that too? Right? So you buy a new Nova chuck and they're righty-tighty. And the old ones were righty-loosey. Yeah, right? So it's like, sure, you know, like, so now you're going to have the same chuck working both ways. Oh, sure. Okay, did I bring my, oh well. I thought I was going to bring my, oh I did, here it is. So I'm just going to use the spindle roughing gouge, and we'll get this cut. I only need about 3 inches for this, and for the finial. So I got enough left over. I can make the top as well. It's not pretty when bald guys sweat. Yeah, but I'm wearing all these layers of protection. All right, so I'm gonna use about 3 inches on here. In fact, I got it a little bit long. I'll give her a shot anyways. That'll be a good test of technique. And I think I'm actually gonna bump this up a little bit on the speed. We'll go 1 notch from 1250 to 1800. How's that sound? Beautiful, he says. Ah, that sounds better. Now the spindle roughing gouge, you know, I know I've mentioned this in the past as well, but it's really just a curved skew, right? So it's got the nice bevel on the bottom, and the 2 wings are fairly flat. They're not as curved, obviously, as the bottom. And if you ride the bevel, you can get some beautiful texture, nice smooth texture on here, and you wouldn't even have to use sandpaper. So that'd be a good thing for you to practice. So if I go 3 inches on here, I don't remember where I put my tape measure again. Backpack. Thank you. So I'm one of those fans of 3, right? So if you're making something and you can divide it into 3, you have the start of your design. So if you have a wide spot on a vessel, I like having it 1/3 of the way down or 1/3 of the way up, and then 2/3 start, you know, maybe the narrowing or something. So on the spindles, and I passed those around, but if you you know, if you look at the spindles and kind of follow the same thing, you know, you have like this, I'll call it the big onion, and so then you can have the thick part as like the 1/3, and then 2/3 of it gets nice and skinny. Does that make sense? So you have twice as long of the skinny area, the skinny area as you would have the thick area, and that works good for the human eye. And the other thing, if you had like other design features where you wanted a ring or something and you try to follow that same pattern, it usually is fairly pleasant. So if I go 3 inches long, on this side is just going to be the tenon, and that'll fit inside of the 5/8 inch hole. And then I'll probably have a little ring here. My top onion I'll have starting from here, and maybe the heavy spot will be like here. Did you swap that? Can you see that? Yeah. Where's that one pointed? You move those? Are you only doing one camera at a time? I haven't been watching. He's got a switch. Yeah, turn it to 2. Camera 2. Can you zoom in, or do you have to push it in? So anyways, this part will be like tenon. So I'm not worried about that yet. So this will be the shoulder. There'll be a little rounded area here that'll cover the hole, and then the wide part of my large onion is going to be around here, taper down to here, and then down in here I'll have the small little piece on the end. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Use different colors for each of these so that you would know which one. Yeah, I like that. Did you bring your coloring book and colors? I could borrow it? No? I would use the same, 3 to 1 or 2 to 1. So use the number 3, and then the longest item would be twice as long as the shortest. So if your globe was 2 inches, you could have, up to a 4-inch, icicle or finial on the bottom. I don't know how big those are, but you can absolutely, yeah. But if you make them, real long or real short, and you're wondering why, it doesn't flow real good. So this one right here, I don't know, you can make the call if you like the proportions. It's 2.5, and then almost 3.5 on the finial, so it's not quite. No, I mean, it's just a guideline. But, sometimes if you're just running casually and you're making things, sometimes you put them together and you're going like, ooh, wait a minute, that's not how I wanted it to look. At least if you have a starting point, it always helped me. All right, so I'm going to clean this up a little bit closer to the final size, and then I'll remove the tailstock. Oops, did that twice. Just caught that last little piece down there. All right, so I'm going to switch to my skew, and this skew is just a very inexpensive skew that I got with one of my lathes. The guy just gave me all the tools that he had, and I never really found a use for it until I started doing finials. One of the things that when you're turning larger items, you kind of lose track of is how many miles of surface area go across your cutting edge, right? So you do a 10-inch bowl, and in no time at all, you can travel a mile where that cutting edge has been engaged in wood for over a mile, right? And then you wonder, why is it getting dull? And it's like, well, you drag a piece of steel across a mile of wood, and then it doesn't seem so surprising. When you're using the small little projects like this, your softer steels are just fine because you're not going to dull as fast because you're not going through as much wood. So this works out real fine for me. I have a little honing stone, so it's a cheap skew. I use it when I'm cutting this. The size is very appropriate for what I'm cutting, and I can just touch it up. Oops, yep. Let's see here what I want to do. All right, so I'm going to try to delicately cut into my foot here. And I think, there we go. So now I have this long piece of wood spinning, and it's unsupported on the end, so the reason I brought it down this thin is so that I don't have to cut much anymore, right? So now I just have to take the final few passes to get the shape that I want. And I'm going to be supporting it with my fingers. Since it's smooth and it's small, I'm not getting any real heat buildup, and it's not uncomfortable for me. And now it's just a matter of taking a bunch of really light cuts. And if you get your technique down, this will go very easily. So I'll make the tip. I don't have quite enough light, to be honest with you, but I'm going to reduce the diameter of this a little bit. So my little onion on the end here is going to stop right about where my tool is. Can you go to the other camera once? I wonder how that would look. Yeah, there we go. So that'll be the wide spot on the tip. And so now I need to remove the bulk of material here, and I'm going to start with just a couple of really light V-cuts. And what I found out is you can go like twice from one side, then you got to swap and you got to go to the other side. I'm just removing stock right now. I'm not worried about the shape yet. Okay, now I'm close enough where I'm starting to round over the top shoulder. And one of the things that I found kind of by accident was I take advantage. Oops, something chipped off right there. Yep. I think that when I was playing before, I broke that. That's easily fixed. We just make a shorter spindle. That's why I added extra length to this, because I knew I was going to show you how to fix a broken onion on the tip. So what you do is you make this an extra inch long. Remember that. Remember that. So I'm riding the skew here is just like you're on a larger spindle. I'm the bottom edge of my tool I had to soften because the top is real square, real sharp, and those sharp edges will dig into your tool rest. So I had to sand that down, and then resting the bevel, about the halfway to 2/3 way up, it's resting on the wood, and that's what's giving you the depth of cut. So goes pretty smooth, but as you can see, it's only taken off slivers. Oh, I just did it again. And I like to have a little bit of a concave. So, practice, the shapes that you like. I did sharpen this on my grinder this morning. Over time, when you use the honing stone, your shoulders, instead of having that concave grind, your shoulders, it'll start to make it convex, right? Because you keep working the tip, and that concave surface disappears. But that little convex helps you do an inside curve. It's just a little bit easier to ride the bevel on my sharpened skew after I've honed it a few times. So I just kind of met the top of the onion with the bottom of the next icicle, or the onion from up above. And what usually happens, just out of, I'm going to call it my inexperience, is that right here, it's really easy to leave an extra little bump. So this was totally by accident the first time I did it, because it was easy to stop before I get to that onion and leave that there and pretend it was on purpose. But it adds just that little bit of cosmetic look, and it makes it a little less treacherous when you're cleaning that cut. So again, feel free to make up your own stories when you do the demos. And I'm just cleaning up the shoulder of that little bead. The other thing I noticed is, as I invested in those, I don't know what you call them. There's a headset. It's the extra powerful lenses you put with your head basket on here, so I can flip down my reader glasses in front of me. And I've been using those more and more, and I'm really liking them. And can't see real good anymore. I think that's going to be a common theme with our group. So right now I just keep riding the bevel, and again, I put that bead on there, and in all honesty, for me it feels like I'm cheating, but it works out really well, because I just keep pushing away the wood until I get this as thin as I want it, and I'm stopping at the bead, because that's a little safer than stopping at the little onion that's just below it. And then you're supporting it from underneath all the while. Use the heel of this cutter in this case, and I just kind of clean that up. And if I do this right, I won't even really need to sand it. Sanding is really quick and easy, though, on these small projects, so don't be afraid to do that. Your sandpaper can allow you to create these very quickly. All right, so what I'm going to do here, which camera we got? Okay. So what I'm going to do here is make this diameter a little smaller. It's a little thick yet. And this little skew, it really does, it's the right tool for this process. It makes it easy. It's not that hard to master either. I would encourage you to give it a shot. All right, so now I want this to be just where it is. That'll be the base. I'm going to start to cut a V in here. And then when I was practicing this, my skew did skate all the way across one of those. If you checked in that one box, there's one with some nice tracks across it. What's that? Embellishment, yeah. So then what you want to be able to do is turn the lathe the other direction and then do it the other way, and it looks like it's on purpose because it's crossed. I haven't mastered that yet. I had a drill once that I had in reverse, and that wouldn't go into the wood very well, and if you just really had to push it hard. Yep, you're just not pushing hard enough. So as you're using the skew for your shoulders, that's a rounded cut, right? And so you have to rotate the tool, change the orientation vertically from kind of a flat cut to a vertical cut, and then kind of dive in a little bit while you're doing it. Real light cuts on this shoulder. Get that to go. Now, the wide part of my top onion is, I'm going to leave it right where it's at, because basically I like where the cut landed. Most of my stuff is just as it happens. If I like it, I leave it. So that'll stay right there, and now I'm going to scallop out that middle and blend in the rest of the shaft. Real carefully blend that down to there, and maybe one more pass and I could call her good. Oh, I got a tool mark I don't like. I got to do one more pass. Well, we'll pretend I brought sandpaper. Do a little bit of scraping motion here. Don't like that. All right, so on the base that goes up against the hole here, I don't want it to be a flat flange that gets put up. I like having both edges rolled a little bit. Does that make sense? So instead of having the shoulder with a 90-degree edge, I'm just going to soften that up a little bit before I create the tenon. So I'll do a couple of quick cuts. And again, especially when you're starting, don't cut more than twice from one direction. So just a little bit. And again, if I had sandpaper, I would just touch that real quick, and that would soften that up nicely. And let's see. I'm going to use my my parting tool, and I better grab my calipers now. So I'm going to take my drill bit. Let's see here. If I change this, can you see that? What am I looking at? Which camera? Oh, here we go. Thank you. So I'm just going to use my drill bit as my reference point for the hole. And now that's the diameter that I need the tenon, right? And I got a little bit light on my shoulder, so we'll have to deal with that. I did not leave enough material for how I would normally make it. It should be fine. Where's the piece that I sent through before? Oh, there it is. So if I did it right, it'll fit in here. And there we go. So